Hello everyone, I am delighted to welcome you to the launch of the vision for the 1001 Critical Days. It's the culmination of a passion that I've held for nearly 25 years, that we should help every family to give their baby the very best start in life, and we should always have the baby at the very centre of our thinking. First of all, I'm really grateful to all the panellists at today's launch who've been instrumental in identifying our key areas for action. And there are many others who've also supported the work from the early years sector and also from the three advisory groups of professionals, academics, and cross-party parliamentarians. They've all taken part in the review, and I thank you all from the bottom of my heart. And more importantly, I thank you all for the work you're going to do in the implementation phase. I also want to sincerely thank the Prime Minister for his personal commitment to this. Just this morning, I was with him at a visit to a nursery to hear his personal commitment to making sure that we support every family to give their baby the best start for life. The period from conception to the age of 2 is when the building blocks for lifelong emotional and physical health are laid down. So what we do here is going to help us to transform our society for the better. So I do want to introduce Matt Hancock, the Secretary of State for Health, who is going to just give us a little bit of his own views of the 1001 days. And then we're going to hear from my lovely colleague, Jo Churchill, who has herself 4 children and knows all about the importance of the early years. So first of all, Matt Hancock, thank you very much.
The first 1001 days can shape a young child's future more so than any other time in their life. During these critical years, we know that most babies get amazing care thanks to loving parents and supportive early years professionals. But we also know that more support is needed to make sure everyone fulfills their potential. This was the thinking behind the Early Years Healthy Development Review. We started its work last year. Since then, the team have been talking to parents, carers, early years professionals, NHS staff, and volunteers all across the country. And it's clear that while there's so much brilliant work taking place, that for too many families, the quality and consistency of the support they get is not good enough. It depends too much on your background or where you live. The review shows we can put this right and ensure better support, better promotion of services, and better access to vital data. The review comes at an important time because the pandemic has been tough for so many new families who, through no fault of their own, haven't been able to access face-to-face services or in-person support. The crisis has shown us that levelling up health inequalities and inequalities in well-being is critical. For me, it's the most important levelling up that there is. And there's no better place to start than in the most formative years. I'd like to thank everyone who's been part of this review and make their voice heard. And in particular, I want to thank the work of Andrea Leadsom, who has really led this with a passion and a drive and such energy. I'd like to thank Andrea's advisory groups, who I know have been invaluable in shaping the review, and the dedication that all have shown. We've always shared a passion for this vital subject, and I'm so grateful to Andrea for lending her expertise and for making this review a reality. It wouldn't have happened without you, Andrea. Thank you. I can't wait to take this vision forward alongside the work on tackling childhood obesity, expanding parent-infant therapies through the NHS long-term plan, keeping our children safe through world-leading immunisation programmes, which are more important than ever before. As we build back better after coronavirus, we've got to make it our mission to give every single child the best possible start in life. And now I'd like to hand over to my colleague Jo Churchill, who'll say more about the review's recommendations. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed today's events.
So thank you very much indeed. May I just start by saying what a pleasure it is to be here with such an esteemed set of speakers. I would like to also extend my gratitude to Andrea for her tireless work on this review, but also to the decades of her tireless work in this area. It is something that I know her powers of persuasion, which are legendary, will help us through phase 2 as we approach that, because we need to ensure that we give all babies the best possible start for life. As we've heard, the period for between conception and age 2 is critical in a child's development. It's during that time that those important foundations are laid. Creating that strong and healthy start can help see all our children through life, through school, through work, through parenthood and beyond. That's why this review is so important. We want to identify the challenges and problems from the earliest stage. We want to help parents care well for their children. We want to change and improve healthy behaviours and protect against preventable diseases. We know that if babies are well supported in that period from conception to age 2, they're set up for a whole lifetime of better mental and physical health. Today, the government published the review's first report called The Best Start for Life, a vision for the 1001 critical days. And this vision sets out 6 areas to ensure that families have access to the services they need at the time they need them. The first of these action areas is ensuring seamless support for families. The review sets out how the government will encourage all local areas to publish a Start for Life offer. This offer should be coherent, joined up, and available to all. It should explain clearly to parents and carers what services they are entitled to, and importantly, how they can access them. I know that Andrea is really keen for Start for Life services to be co-designed with parent and carer panels. And this will include a universal offer for every family and a universal plus offer to meet the needs of specific local communities. I am keen for Andrea and her team to work with local authorities, the NHS, and a range of other partners to implement it and ensure that it's at the heart of the local healthcare commissioning and integral to integrated care systems as we move forward. The second action is ensuring a welcoming hub for the family, supporting all families to access the Start to Life services that they need. To do this, the review team will work with local partners to maximise resources and the facilities that they have. And this will mean working with the National Centre for Family Hubs to ensure that councils understand how best to build a family hub support network. In the next phase of the review, work will be undertaken to understand why families are sometimes discouraged from accessing support. The team want to identify the practical steps that should be taken to reduce stigma some experience when asking for help. Every parent and carer needs to know it's perfectly normal to ask for help, and it's perfectly okay to do it too. The third area of the Vision for Brilliance is ensuring that families can access trustworthy information when they need it most. This includes digital, virtual, and telephone services designed around the needs of babies, parents, and carers. To do this, the review team will map out the Start for Life journey and capture how families experience these services through the first critical 1001 days. We need to embrace the opportunities presented by new technology. For example, through the digitisation of the personal child health record, better known as the Red Book. My children's 4 Red Books, I still have in their memory boxes. They're an important thing, but we need to move forward and make a digital record available to new parents. And so we'll work closely with the NHS and local partners to roll out the digital personal child health record for every new birth by April 2023. The fourth action area is ensuring that we have an empowered Start for Life workforce. The vision is that every family will be supported by a range of professionals and volunteers, each of whom brings skills, knowledge, and empathy to the interactions that they have with families. From their very first appointment, every parent and carer must feel that they are heard and that they can ask for help. Her intention to strengthen the continuity of care and work with local leaders and the National Centre for Family Hubs to further explore the concept of that key contact for every family is something that I fully support. We want to develop a modern, diverse, skilled workforce that can better meet the needs of all families. We want to incentivise a strong focus on sharing best practice with the Start for Life workforce, and the importance of demonstrating empathy should be at the heart of the training and development for our workforce. The next action area is a commitment to continually improve the Start for Life offer. We want every parent and carer to have the confidence that the services and support in their area will help give them and their baby, or babies, as I noticed there was a set of twins in that early piece of film, their baby the best start for life. A brilliant Start for Life offer will continuously improve with better data, evaluation, and proportionate inspection. As I've mentioned already, Andrea is keen to support the establishment of parent and carer panels so that we can co-design services and provide feedback on them. We also want to build a consensus for a new outcomes framework for the Start to Life system to drive improvement and shine a spotlight on health inequalities, and to develop that proportionate inspection regime. Last but not least, we know that leadership is critical to the success of this vision. There must be local and national commitment and accountability. In doing so, we want to learn from the experiences of parents and carers and ensure their voices help inform national policy and decision-making. Andrea has long championed the need for a single identifiable leader who is accountable for the Start to Life offer in their area. The leader ensures that the 1001 critical days are prioritised and that services are co-commissioned across the public and third sectors as part of the integrated care system's core offer. And importantly, that these services offered are excellent. The team will work with partners in local authorities to develop best practice on which individuals should take this role up. It could, for example, be the Director of Children's Services or the Director of Public Health, or an equivalent role depending on the preference of each area. I think we all can agree that this vision is a fantastic one. It sets out that ambition that every baby and young child, no matter what their background, has the best start in life. But we know this is just the beginning. The Early Years Healthy Development Review will now continue with its second phase and focus on the implementation and delivery of these key 6 action areas. We look forward to working closely with you as we do this and to deliver for babies, families, and for all our futures. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Joe. It's been a real pleasure to have your help and support throughout. And I think everybody taking part today will see that in both Joe and in Matt, we've got some real strong advocates within government for this. And just to let you know, we've got over 500 people signed up to watch this launch. So thank you all very much for your interest. And if you'd like to, we have a hashtag, of course, who doesn't these days, which is hashtag I am backing babies. And we're really keen to make sure that we can support as much as possible the next phase of the work. So it's now my great pleasure to introduce Professor Jane Barlow, who is Professor of Evidence-Based Intervention and Policy Evaluation at the University of Oxford. She is actually going to talk to us a bit, just for a few moments, before we get started with the presentations on the action areas, about why the 1001 Critical Days is so uniquely important. So Jane, who I've worked with for many, many years, is going to talk to us about brain development. Thanks very much, Jane.
Yeah, am I unmuted? I am unmuted, aren't I? Let me just whiz back to the beginning. So yeah, thank you very, very much. And, I wanted to start really by, by saying a big congratulations, Andrea, on what you've achieved with this. When this advertisement for this global art and science exhibition on the first 1000 days of a child's life landed in my inbox, I just felt a sense of joy, really. A joy in the realization of what has been achieved in terms of the fight to get this period recognized in the way that we know that it needs to be recognized if we're going to give every child the best start for life. And we've spent many years in academia debating the importance, the relative importance of nature and nurture. And I think it was really the most recent research on epigenetics that has enabled us to really bring these two domains together. And I love the term nurturing nature, which I first heard from Peter, and is really demonstrates the fact that the environment is playing a very big part here. The genes lay down the roadmap, if you like, but all of the detail and nuance comes from this. And so environment is the main architect of the brain, and the key part of the environment is the early experiences to which children are exposed. We've had this knowledge since the late 1980s about the two different kinds of brain plasticity, and I'm not going to bore you all with the details here, other than to say, just please notice that the word experience is there in both of the key types of development. And it's this sort of experience, these interactions with primary caregivers, that really are the drivers of the brain development in the very early years. And this shows you the massive amount of the neuronal development, the migration, the pruning that begins back at 28 weeks, and the myelination and this massive growth spurt that takes place from 28 weeks on to 40 weeks. But even when the baby's born, this is the only organ that is not fully developed when the baby is born, and 90% of the remainder of the development takes place during the first 5 years of life. So I think that evidence really gives us the basis for a number of things in terms of what we should be doing. So parenting doesn't begin when the baby's born, it begins in pregnancy. And it begins with a whole range of maternal health behaviours that protect the developing baby and optimise its development, and also with the development from the second and third trimester onwards of the relationship. And the key message here is that many of the key factors that compromise a baby's early development are common, but they are completely modifiable. We can do something about all of these things. Stress in pregnancy, 1/4 of women in this recent survey said that they experienced anxiety in pregnancy. This is strongly related to children's emotional and behavioural development later in life, and we could potentially reduce the prevalence of emotional and behavioural disorders by around 5% if we were effective in addressing stress in pregnancy. Alcohol consumption is the major cause of learning disability in children. One study showed that around 50% of children in foster care have FASD. And the global prevalence of alcohol use is, is 1 in 10. And of course, fetal alcohol spectrum, FAS in the general population has been estimated to be around 14.6 per 10,000 in the population. And IPV is frighteningly common in pregnancy as well. So key areas that we could be working on. And I love this evidence about the way in which how the mother thinks or mentalizes about her unborn baby. And this really is the process of developing a bond. This is a strong indicator of how she's going to interact with her baby in the postnatal period. So this is just a lovely opportunity that nature's given us, if you like, to get in there early and think about the ways in which we could improve that mum's feelings about the unborn baby with a view to promoting good interactions in the postnatal period and, trying to get more than 60% of the population with a secure attachment. The key message too is about parent-infant interaction and the need to focus on that, irrespective of what, it's taken me quite a while to realize this, but whatever outcome you focus on in relation to children's development, whether it's their regulatory abilities, their attachment, their language development, their preschool readiness, their food intake, it is exactly the same parental interactions with that child that influence whether that outcome is good or otherwise. And I've listed some of them here. You'll all be familiar with them. The need for the parent to respond in a timely and appropriate way, the need for parents to engage in these processes of synchrony. There's then a rupture, and we need parents to be able to repair that rupture. And we know that many who are experiencing mental health problems, for example, find that difficult to do. The importance of reflective functioning and mirroring, again, Peter Fonagy's work here, the ability of the parent to really understand why their behavior looks like it does, reflects their ability to recognize that it is due to the baby's internal feeling states. And to the extent that a parent can do that, their interactions with the infant are much better than if you aren't able really to understand or think about what the internal feeling states are. So you sometimes hear parents who are experiencing lots of problems say, the baby's crying, won't stop crying. They'll say, she's doing this to annoy me. That parent, if they were able to get inside and have a sense, she's doing it because she's hungry or she's tired, that affects how you interact. And then scaffolding, lovely evidence about the importance of turn-taking interactions that are reciprocal and based in the child's optimal zone. I did think we should just probably have a quick look at this video if it works, and it probably isn't going to work, and you may have to do it all afterwards, but it's just a quick 30-second moment of
I think it's not going to work, Jane. Perhaps you could, we could after.
Okay. So I'm going to go back then. Let me just close that down. I'm not sure you could hear that, the conversation, but go and have a look at it afterwards. It's truly wonderful, and all of the sorts of interactions that we're wanting there. So then, just to go back to my final couple of slides, just go back to there. So there we are. It is these early ways of being, whether it looks like this or whether it looks like this, that really are the foundations for the child's developing cognitive, emotional, and social capabilities. And you know, we know that from the evidence that there's a significant impact on the developing brain. This is a biochemical response, and that positive responses build up good development of neurons, whereas negative looks trigger a very different biochemical response, the release of cortisol. And it's not just the impact on the brain, it's the impact on their developing mind and their developing sense of who they are as a person. And it's these repeated early states of intersubjectivity between the parent and the infant that really give us our sense of who we are. It doesn't come from looking in a mirror. It comes from having some mirroring from our parents in the very early years, as you can see demonstrated here. And these are the things that are being developed as a consequence of these early interactions with the we-the-parent. And so my final message then is to say, yes, this period is tremendously important, but we now know, we have a good knowledge about what works, and there are some clear messages in terms of what we need to be doing to ensure that every baby has the best start for life. And I'm really very, very hopeful that this early years review is now going to provide us with the infrastructure that we need to enable practitioners to support parents to give every child the best start in life. And thank you again to Andrea and her team for the wonderful work that you've done on this.
Thanks, Jane. If we needed reminding, it is a critical period and we know what works, we just have to do it. So now we're going to go straight on to the first 3 action areas for what the report is making different in the future. And we're going to crack on through those first 3 areas, which are what families will get. And to introduce the first one, Jo Churchill gave us a top line, but Professor Eunice Lumsden, Head of Early Years at the University of Northampton, is going to give us a bit more detail. Eunice has worked for many years, including as a founding trustee of NORPIT, the Northamptonshire Parent-Infant Partnership, with me, and she is fully committed to this agenda. So thank you very much, Eunice.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrea. It's my great personal and professional privilege to present to you the Action Area 1. So we heard throughout the review that access to joined-up services could be significantly improved. Currently, access to services is patchy and parents often do not know what is available or where to get help. So Action Area 1, seamless support for families. We will ensure that a coherent joined-up start for life offer is available to all families with access to the services that they need. Local authorities working with other local partners should pull together a coherent and joined-up start for life offer and make it clearly available for every parent to access. The offer should explain to them what services they are entitled to and how they can access them. These Start for Life offers should be co-designed with parent and carer panels and include a universal offer for every family and a universal plus offer to meet the needs of their specific local communities. The universal offer must include midwifery, health visiting, mental health services and breastfeeding support, in addition to statutory services such as safeguarding. The Universal Plus offer should meet the needs of the local population and could cover a broad range of issues ranging from language barriers to debt advice, from stopping smoking to domestic abuse, and from housing support to transport for parents living in a rural area. It is important that the lessons learned are shared amongst local areas. And so during the implementation phase of this action area, work with local leaders will take place to identify and implement best practice in the Start for Life offer. This approach is intended to transform access to services for every family across England, ensuring they receive the services and support they need. Thank you very much.
Brilliant, thanks Eunice. Food for thought on Action Area 1, and there will be a question and answer session once we've heard the first 3 areas. That's just the bell for a change of business in Parliament today, so ignore that. We come now to Action Area 2, and I'm delighted that Dr. Alan Gregoire, who is consultant perinatal psychiatrist and also founder and honorary president of the Maternal Mental Health Alliance, known I'm sure to many of you for his passion for the importance of looking after the mental health of new parents, is going to introduce our second action area. Over to you, Alan. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Andrea, and thank you particularly for all that you've done to bring this about. As a mother and baby psychiatrist who spent over 35 years promoting better care for the mental health of women in pregnancy and postnatally, and as president of the MMHA, representing over 100 professional and patient organisations, I'm really, really delighted to support this announcement. It is so important that every family feels supported in giving their baby the best start for life. Feedback from this review highlighted how integral face-to-face support is for parents, and that the places where families go to get help must be designed around their needs. So, Action Area 2, a welcoming hub for families, will champion family hubs as a place for families to access Start for Life services and ensure that families have the access to the support that they need. To achieve this, during the implementation phase, the Start for Life delivery team will work with local partners to maximize the resources and the facilities that they already have in order to ensure the best offer is made available to families. It'll make sure that local leaders understand how to build their family hub network, including incorporating the existing Sure Start children's centres into their network where appropriate. Many families feel concerned or embarrassed to ask for help as they fear that they may be considered a bad parent. So I'm really pleased to see that in the next phase of the review, in this implementation phase, the Start for Life team will be identifying practical steps to provide reassurance and to reduce the risk of families feeling stigmatized. Identifying the best way to introduce families to their local hub is a point that was raised many times during the review, and I welcome the plan to encourage local authorities to consider offering birth registration services at the family hub so that every family visits the hub and is able to access the reassurance and support that they need to give their baby the best start for life.
Great, thanks, Alan. And now we come on to our third action area in this first section about what families will get, what will be different for them in the future. And to present that is my very good, very old friend, Tim Lawton MP, who has worked with me on this subject for many, many years. He is currently the chairman of the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Conception to Age 2, and he is the outgoing, recently departed chairman of the Parent Infant Foundation. And I know he shares my passion for making sure every baby gets the best start for life. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Andrea. Very old, but not necessarily recently departed, as you put it. But it's a great privilege and a pleasure to have been part of this review. And today's just the culmination of an awful lot of hard work that you and many others have put into this. But of course, it's not just the culmination, because as you'll remind us all, there's a great deal of work now to be set out, as the review has described. So it's a very exciting time, and thank you for making me part of it. So I'm Action Area 3 today, and I'm really interested in the role of digital and virtual services in the early years space. This is an exciting area of change that will transform the way that technology can help to improve a baby's start for life. Now, we heard throughout the review about the role of digital services, and in particular how they helped during the pandemic. Parents who felt incredibly isolated during lockdown, and still do, needed to be able to find information quickly and also to feel confident that they're accessing something that they can trust. So Action Area 3, the information families need when they need it, designs digital, virtual, and telephone offers around the needs of families. Now, I'm really excited that we will be replacing the old paper red book, the familiar red book that every parent receives following the birth of their baby, with a new digital health record. It'll let parents record and easily access all of their baby's health information digitally, and cuts out the need to repeat information over and over again to different healthcare professionals. It will enable features like push notifications that send reminders of appointments and immunizations, and may in future also be a place where parents can record precious personal milestones such as first steps, first words, and family photographs. Now, the review will continue to work closely with NHSX to develop the digital red book, as well as with other partners such as NHS England, Public Health England, and NHS Improvement, to map out the Start for Life journey of parents and carers that captures how they experience digital, virtual, and telephone-based services. And the review also intends to oversee the creation of a digital front door, working with NHS England and NHS Improvements to enable parents to access trusted information in just one digital space. I believe this will truly transform the way parents and carers access support for their baby, and will help them to give their baby the best start for life.
Thanks, Tim. I completely agree with you. I think that a digital version of the Red Book is quite a game changer, actually. For so many years, we've seen professionals in the early years space who said, we just don't know a person's story. You know, they have to come and tell us their story all over again and again and again. And for families, they're just like, I can't believe you don't even know where I live and you're asking me again. And likewise for volunteers, they just feel, well, we're doing great work here, but we never know anything about anyone. So actually a digital Red Book really is quite a game changer. It's really exciting. So thanks all of you. That is the first 3 of our action areas. And we're now going to have some questions from the floor. So any questions to Jane Barlow, to Alan Gregoire, to Eunice Lumsden, to Tim Lawton, or to me, please keep them coming in the chat. Our first question is from Justin Irwin, the Chief Executive of the Parent Infant Foundation. He is saying the review describes the patchy specialist parent-infant relationship support around the UK. And just to warn you, Alan, I'm going to ask you to answer this question. He says, will the Start for Life unit work with NHS England to ensure there are specialised parent-infant relationship teams in all areas as part of the long-term plan to secure specialist mental health support for all children? And before Alan answers that, I just want to say, obviously the next phase, the implementation phase, is really crucial to this, but Alan will certainly give you his thoughts as the person on this panel who is perhaps most experienced in the importance of maternal mental health. Thanks, Alan.
Well, look, being a parent is the most difficult thing that any of us ever does. We may think we're clever in our professional lives or in other aspects of our lives, but when it comes to being a parent, there's one thing you can guarantee is that at some point you'll get it wrong. And I suspect when they're teenagers also, you can pretty much guarantee they'll list all the things that you got wrong. So you need your wits about you. And you know what you need to be a parent is not good liver function, not strong bones, but a healthy mind, and you need it to be functioning tip-top all of the time. And so it absolutely is not surprising that if our minds are not working optimally, if we're suffering mentally, that is going to make it really difficult to do the good job that we want to do. So supporting mums and dads and partners with their mental well-being, and specifically also, in addition to that, supporting them with the skills and the shortcuts to learning those difficult lessons about being a parent can be incredibly helpful and valuable. And as we've heard from Jane Barlow, one of the most critical elements is that close interactive relationship between parents, caregivers, and tiny little newborn babies. In fact, there's evidence in the interaction between mum and her fetus can have an impact on the development of that baby's brain. So working on both support and valuing parents to enhance their mental well-being, and supporting them to be able to engage in that interaction in the way in which they would like to do, in that effective way for them and their baby, is critically important. Will this be delivered from the long-term plan? Well, not all of it. No, more needs to be done than is in the long-term plan. So there are definitely plans for parent-infant interventions for mums who are severely affected by mental health problems, but we actually need it much broader across the board, available to all parents who might need it, and I think that will come from this policy initiative.
I certainly agree, Alan, and no doubt we'll be working very closely together on that over the next year as we work on the implementation. So the next question is from Dr. Sebastian Kramer from the Tavistock and Portman NHS Trust. And this is for Eunice. Can you confirm that every children's hub, family hub, will have a physical location, i.e. a building in which parents can congregate with their children, even if they don't require expert help? And in particular, he asked, will health visitors be co-located there? Thanks, Eunice.
Okay, thank you for the question. I think that we have to wait now to the implementation phase to see how this will be visualized in the country. I think we have a lot of lessons that we've learned from the past in terms of what's been and what's gone before, but there's certainly a real drive you can see from the report to ensure that health visiting, midwifery and access to services for parents is top of the agenda now. And I think we have to, as professionals and practitioners involved in this area, listen to what parents are telling us and the support that they need, because we can offer the best services in the world and everything, but if parents actually don't know how to access it or don't know what's available to them, then we're starting off on the wrong foot in the first place. Thank you.
Thanks, Eunice. We've got a question now from Rona Hamilton, Specialist Practice Assessor, Health Visiting in Surrey, for Tim. Tim, how would the government approach the challenge of you don't have to tell your story again and again, which is, as we've said, a phrase frequently used for the public when they're trying to navigate services, but isn't evidenced well in reality? So her experience is that digitising records to share with other services has improved communication, mainly between service providers. However, it doesn't impact the fact that people have to tell their story over again because of the way services are set up. So, Tim, will the digital version of the Red Book make a difference?
It absolutely has to make a difference. And I just know how frustrating it is. And dealing with constituents in the time when I was Children's Minister and went around with social workers, where people who desperately needed help constantly had to go back to square one to give their whole life history and what was wrong with the children, the family situation or whatever. Now, we've got to make sure that the Digital Red Book is designed both by professionals and by the parents, the users, to make sure that it's accessible from both sides. And we've got to make sure that everybody's talking to each other. And this is a real testimony to joined up services actually coming together in reality. So we've got to make sure that all the information is there, that all the relevant professionals, with all the confidentiality and everything we need to have around it, can go and see somebody with a full record of what they're going to see that person about, with all the background, and the family that they're dealing with can rest assured that that information is being accessed appropriately by all the appropriate people that need to see it, and then get on with offering them the service, the support, whatever it is they need, rather than just going through their life story yet again. So absolutely, that's what the Digital Red Book is all about, and it's essential that it works.
Thanks, Tim. We've got an anonymous question. Will councils be funded to deliver an effective joined up services, Also, health visiting is vital for early years, but numbers have decreased over the past 5 years. How will this be addressed? And this is perhaps one for me. I will talk briefly later about the next steps. But very clearly, what this report today is actioning is better joined up services. So the feedback was so clearly that families feel that it's patchy, that they don't know where to go for help or what they can get if they do ask for help. And so the whole purpose of today is to ensure that putting families at the centre, seeking their feedback for continual improvements is at the heart of this. However, all of us panelists, all those involved recognise that there will be the need for more funding. And so part of the next phase will be making the case, the economic case, for more investment in the early years. But nevertheless, I should say in our research, we found such good examples of great practice amongst local authorities. So some of them are really providing the joined up support that families need. And it's a real case of needing to share that best practice and during the implementation phase to look at what the additional financial needs are. So I hope that answers that one. Now, I do have another question for Alan from Sean Drinkwater. How big is the problem of mental health issues in pregnancy and postnatally? And will these government policies make a significant difference? That's for you, Alan.
Right, yeah, well, we've heard from Jane Barlow about the clear scientific evidence that poor mental health affects huge numbers of women in pregnancy and postnatally. And I think actually, I don't think it's not overstating the case to say that this could be truly considered a hidden pandemic. You know, there are nearly 30% of women having babies in this country who experience disabling levels of anxiety, depression, and of course, post-traumatic stress disorder, often from experiences in their own childhoods. So we're talking about mental health problems that go from one generation to the next, to the next, to the next. So it causes huge amounts of silent suffering for mothers and babies that can have lasting effects for mothers and for those offspring. And we also know that at the moment, only about 10% of those women with these problems get evidence-based help, which, you know, if this was cardiology, would be a national scandal. But this has been going on for as long as the NHS has been going on and much longer. But we do also now know, the difference now is that we know about the things that can effectively be done. And so I will be doing everything I can to support the implementation of these policies in phase 2, alongside the full delivery of existing commitments, which are not yet fully implemented. So both that combination of things together, because I am convinced that this can make a big difference to the health and well-being of the next generation in our nation.
Thanks, Alan. We're going to move on in a minute, and there will be another section of Q&A at the end for all of your questions. Thanks so much. They're brilliant. Keep them coming. There is, however, one more question that I want to direct to Jane Barlow, because Jane will have some views on this. This is a question from Daphne Cotton, Wave Trust Ambassador and Best Beginnings Consultant Facilitator. And she has quite a lengthy question, but just to paraphrase, she's asking, isn't it the case that you can't simply identify families who need support by class and economic status alone? And reading between the lines, she's asking about, isn't it right that we need universal support for families, because it's impossible just to look at where they come from and then decide whether they're going to struggle or not? That's for you, Jane. Thank you.
I think you've just answered it perfectly, actually. Thank you, Andrea. Yes, we absolutely need universal support. Progressive universalism was the basis, and this still is the basis of the Healthy Child programme. And you know, this enables practitioners to work with all families in a way that's non-stigmatizing, but then to identify those families that are in need of additional support. And so, yes, this is the basis for good ways of working. But we really need practitioners we need practitioners to be beginning at the right time. So we need health visitors to be there in pregnancy so that they can, identify some of the mums that are experiencing, difficulties maybe in terms of how they're feeling about this unborn baby. That's a wonderful opportunity that we have to do work in the antenatal period that we're not currently using particularly well. So, one of the things that I will really be pushing for is to enable us to, resource services efficiently. Oh dear, my dog's joining the conversation. To resource these things sufficiently to enable, to enable us to do these things as well as we can. And the dog agrees.
Yeah, what would a meeting with you be without the dog barking in the background, Jane? But I hope all of you listening can see we are so well supported in this review, this wealth of knowledge and years of experience from all of our panelists. So thanks again for that. We will come back to Q&A. You'll get another chance to ask questions of each of the panelists. So if you particularly want to hear from a panelist, any of them, please direct your question to them and I will pick as many as I can. We're going to move on now to hear briefly from Anne Longfield, another person I've just worked with forever on this subject. She is, of course, the outgoing Children's Commissioner. She's just recently ended her term of office there, but she's worked through many different children's charities, and she's going to talk to us a bit about her review on the impact on babies in lockdown. So thank you very much, Anne.
Thank you so much. And first of all, I just must say huge congratulations to you, Andrea, for getting this here today, and also for the 6 action areas, which I fully support, but also to everyone else who has spent so many decades working in this sector and making the case for why it's so important. So well done all. And I think, looking at what's happened over lockdown, the first thing is this always has to continue to be our priority because babies just keep on coming. And there's been about 500,000 babies that have been born over the last year. Quite a lot, 1 in Downing Street within there. And each of those babies will come along with, families that are hoping for their best and facing a variety of challenges. So again, to everyone who's worked in the workforce over the last year in these kind of stretching conditions, thank you so much for that. But I think also that, there's always that huge joy of a baby arriving. The last year will have added challenges for an awful lot of people. Some will have risen to that challenge with kind of innovative means. They will have Zoomed their grandparents. They would have had others connecting digitally. But it has added in terms of pressures around worries about health, about a lot of services moving onto the screens, and worries for some about their financial situation, all of which are very real, often at all times, but during the pandemic, even more so. And a sobering statistic that we have about the number of 0 to 1s living in those really fragile home environments where there are some deep-seated problems there which will affect the baby. There are about 100,000, just over 100,000 0 to 1-year-olds who are living in families where there are is domestic violence, addiction, or severe mental health conditions. And of course, for them over the last year, it will have been particularly difficult. They wouldn't have been able to see their family and friends in the way that they would for large parts of the year. They wouldn't have access to the kind of playgrounds, often not outside space, and they would be living in cramped conditions. Some will have taken to advice and support online, others less so. So I think it really has been a difficult year for a lot of those families that are struggling. And even at one point, birth registration stopped for some time. But the beacons of light, I think, that I found during that period, and the ones that I put forward in my report, really reflect a lot of the action areas that you've put forward. And I visited a family hub in Doncaster to talk to some of the parents there about what they had experienced during that period. And I just wanted to share some of those things with you today. A mother there, that the parents were very clear that it was the centre staff being in touch with them tirelessly throughout that whole period that kept them going, and really gave them that sense of belonging, but also sense that they could approach people for advice if they needed. A dad told me who he hadn't been out of work. He was used to working all the time, but he suddenly lost his job and he was a single parent. He'd found the family hub and really found a welcome where he could find food, he could find meals, but also find that conversation, those friends there who knew what it was like to be in that situation and who could help support him. A mum told me how at the hardest moment during the year, when she wondered actually if she could keep going, it was the parents' champion and the staff of that centre that really got her through. They talked her through and whatever hour of the day needed to enable her to get to a better place. And I met a group of lockdown babies and their mums, all of which sounded as though they'd known each other for years. And when I asked how long they'd known each other, they said, actually, it was the first time they'd met. They'd only met online before, but actually they'd managed to keep in touch. They'd managed to get good support from each other because that's what they felt was really needed. We know that whilst there are services there, across the whole range of support for children in the first months, they can often be uncoordinated. They can often feel really fragmented for families, and they don't always feel that they can find their way in. So this joined up proactive approach, which was really supportive workforce that felt they were there for those families, was what I felt was so important here, and that got them through those very difficult times. Also, I'd just really like to highlight the seamless support and the good information. So important for families. And that's something I think can only be built upon over coming months. And I really look forward to seeing what comes through the implementation phase. This is what families have continued to say that they want and what is really needed to be able to have that clear view of what is in offer and how they find it. So the last year, I think, has showed us many things in all aspects of our life. But for those with babies and young babies and families, I think it's really showed us again, first of all, how vital these first months of life are, but also how vital that support for families is, and why all babies and their parents, but especially those with complex challenges, need exactly this kind of joined up support from pre-birth onwards that is being proposed today.
Thanks so much, Anne. I think you've really given a balanced view. There's a lot to keep us quite concerned about babies born in lockdown, but also things we want to continue to capture, you know, the importance of virtual support and so on. So thank you very much for that and for all the brilliant work you did as Children's Commissioner. Turning now to very briefly to thank the Centre for Social Justice, who are hosting today. As I mentioned, we've got something like 550 people signed up. I think it's oversubscribed, actually. I just want to introduce Christina Adone, who is the head of the family work at Centre for Social Justice, and to thank her very much indeed. And we'll just hear your thoughts, Christina. Thank you.
Andrea, thank you for your kind words and especially for this inspiring call to action. At the CSJ, we're delighted to endorse this important review, and we're ready to work with you and the team in delivering support to families. We were founded to counter the 5 pathways to poverty: unemployment, debt, substance misuse, poor educational outcomes, and family breakdown. And many, sometimes all of these elements are present among the struggling families who stand to benefit the most from your review. This is social justice. We cannot speak of the levelling up agenda without addressing the need for all children equally to have access to the support that ensures a good start in life. I think the themes you've highlighted are core to our own vision: the key need for attachment, the understanding of adverse childhood experiences, the crucial role fathers have to play, the great potential that lies within voluntary organizations that are not being used to their best yet, and the need for rolling out family hubs, which was an idea that originated here at the CSJ. I think as a country, we need to recognize parenting is a public health issue. And your timely review makes the case for this important shift in policy. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Christina. That's really good. And if anyone's interested in the work of the Centre for Social Justice, they do a brilliant job. So now we're going to move on to hear from Professor Viv Bennett, another person who's done so much to help get this report onto its feet and to get it agreed within government, which I can tell you is no mean feat. So Professor Viv Bennett is the Chief Nurse, Public Health England and Government Advisor on Public Health Nursing and Midwifery. And she's also very closely involved with the Modernising the Healthy Child programme work that's underway at the moment. And she's going to tell us very briefly about how that ties in with what we're doing today. Thanks so much, Viv.
Thank you. Could I have my slides, please? Thank you very much. It's my turn to say next slide, please. So that's a very exciting thing for me this afternoon. Could I have the first slide, please? It's been an absolute pleasure and a delight to work with Andrea and her amazing team and her amazing director, Liz Ketch, on this project. And the timing has been really helpful and hopefully we've been mutually helpful in thinking about how we start to move this forward. So a very quick reminder about what the Healthy Child programme is. And it's a national framework for children and young people's public health. Our last speaker and speakers before that have said it is vital that this is seen as a key public health priority moving forward. It was published in 2009 and covers a whole range of things that we've discussed today, but also doesn't cover some things that we've discussed today. So for a number of reasons, it is timely to look at modernising the programme and future-proofing it. That isn't to say that nothing has happened since 2009. There have been updates to the schedule of intervention, revisions of immunisation, and new evidence made available for people working in the field. But this is a project over 3 years to modernise the programme. Next slide, please. So why do we need to modernise the programme? We need one that's fit for the future, as I've just said. We have new evidence, we have new policy, including some that's brand new today. We have new systems and we have new systems coming. Integrated care systems provide a real opportunity. We've touched on new technologies and new information systems and new information for parents. So all of those need to be built into a modernised programme. What is it that we need to do? Well, we need, has already been touched on today, to have a programme that is universal in reach and personalised in response. This needs to be a universal service for all families, with all people working in it able to respond in a way that meets the needs of that particular family. We need to make sure that it's based on the most recent evidence, and Jane and others have touched on some of that today. We need to extend the age range, and the modernised programme now includes the preconception period and pregnancy, the whole of pregnancy, and I'll touch on that. And we also need to increase it upwards, and the programme will be extended up to 24 years for young people with a statutory entitlement. And you may wonder why I mentioned that today, but let us remember some of those young people will be parents. And they will need support in parenting their own baby. What's the how? So continuing to update the evidence and practice guidance, working with the profession and policymakers, developing the workforce. Andrea's touched on how important that is. Digital has been very strongly covered, and the need for this integrated cross-government, cross-sector approach. What would success look like? Clearly, it would look like a personalised family-centred service delivering children's public health. It will be a key part of the Start for Life offer. It is really important that we improve access and experience of families, that we improve health outcomes for children, and that we all focus on reducing health inequalities. Next slide, please. So the first area that we've looked at is how do we extend the programme to cover the whole of pregnancy, and our ambition is around women being fit for and fit throughout their pregnancy, their physical and mental health to be good and enable them to have the best pregnancy and birth experience, and their baby to have the best start. And we've looked at 6 areas which are very, very important, and these are actually published now, so you'll be able to look at those. And I think all of them actually have been identified in this discussion to date. And many of those things are modifiable. We can support women to have the healthiest experience that they can if we do the right things, and we have more evidence about those things. We've looked at some women with very particular needs, working with the NHS on trying to reduce inequality and outcome for women from Black and minority ethnic groups. We've worked with experts to look at how we can support women who have a pre-existing severe mental illness to prepare for pregnancy and to be supported through it. And we've developed a digital healthy pregnancy pathway that provides resources to local areas to begin to implement modernisation of the programme. And we've looked particularly at services and at service transition. One of the things families find very difficult is any stop-start in the way that services are provided, and particularly sometimes mentioned is the handover between maternity and midwifery services onto your health visiting service. So the first area of work that we've looked at has been around pregnancy. Next slide, please. The next piece that we've looked at is how we further develop this national framework for local services. The place-based leadership will be absolutely vital, as Andrea's already touched on. We've begun the work to work with health visitors on an updated service model and improved commissioning guidance, refreshed our current high impact changes, and looking very closely at inequalities in child development at 2 to 2.5 to see what we could and should have done to stop that happening going forward. Anne Longfield's just touched on how the pandemic has affected families, and what we do know is that families who were vulnerable before the pandemic have in many cases been made more vulnerable through it, and that some children and families who were on the edge of vulnerability have probably now tipped into needing extra support. So we've done a lot of work with colleagues across government actually on vulnerability, how we understand it, how we quantify it, and more importantly, what we do about it through building back better after COVID. Next slide, please. This is, so those first 2 slides largely showed how we build a strong universal service, how we can make sure that all families are supported and provide more help to families who need it most. What we've also done is to identify some of those areas where there are specific health challenges and to resource work to try to address some of those. We know that speech, language and communication is one of the most important markers as to how you will thrive going into preschool and into school. And we know that early development of language is really vital. And there's a lot of work that's been done on narrowing the word gap and helping children to be ready to learn. And ready to learn means in a more formal setting. Of course, babies are learning from the moment they're born. We also know that inequalities in children's oral health are both important in themselves and make children more likely to need to go into hospital, and important as sentinel markers of need. And so a big focus with our dental public health colleagues on what we can do about that. I think Matt Hancock touched on the importance of a healthy weight in childhood, and we are doing some work on that in this year. Very importantly, for those families who do need extra help, we've a real focus on intensive parenting. What have we learnt from programmes like Family Nurse Partnership and MESH, and how can we take those forward? So really a big programme of work at the universal and the targeted and specialist level, with evidence-based programmes to support parents to enable babies and children to thrive, play and learn, and to meet the ambition that we've stated over a number of years now of reducing inequalities in readiness to learn and readiness for school. So that's a whistle-stop tour of some of the priorities for the modernisation, and we see this very much as part of the implementation of this fantastic review, and we will be working with the review team moving forward on making sure that we can embed a really effective Healthy Child programme for the first 1,000 days into the offer. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Viv. And I hope we're building a very clear picture for everyone who's taking part today on the level of commitment and the fact that government is working together with so many across the early years sector to make this a reality. So very excited about it all. And we're coming on now to the second 3 areas for action. And these 3 areas are about how to make the system work better. And to introduce the first of those is Cheryl Adams, who is the very recently retired Executive Director of the Institute of Health Visiting, and somebody who has done so much to support new families. Thanks very much, Cheryl.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Actually, not quite retired. I've got 3 more days. I retire next week. Hello, it's such a privilege and pleasure to be here today. I've worked alongside Andrea for many years, sharing her passion to shine a light onto the importance of the very early years. So very many congratulations, Andrea, to you and to your amazing team for reaching this exciting point with your review. The strength of the health visiting role is that every family has a health visitor from the antenatal period until the child enters school. So health visitors are the best placed professionals to provide a safety net for all babies, young children and their families. However, it's vital that families are supported by a range of professionals and volunteers, and each of those will bring skills, knowledge and empathy to their interaction with families. They provide the confidence for parents and carers that there are people who will help them on their journey, and they make sure that their baby is able to, and to make sure that their baby is able to get the best start in life. So action area 4 is an empowered Start for Life workforce. It focuses on building skills across the Start for Life workforce, strengthening continuity of care and supporting a modern workforce that can meet the needs of every family. This action area will work involving stakeholders to develop improvements to education and training and the sharing of best practice. Additionally, the review will help local partners share best practice and work together to provide joined up support for every family. I think the concept as a key contact is a very good one. It will help to provide support and reassurance to families that they know who to contact for advice. This is essential. It's an idea that will be considered further during the implementation phase with local leaders and the National Centre for Family Hubs. The development of costed proposals to strengthen the Start for Life workforce will also be explored during the implementation phase, focusing on how to increase diversity, addressing issues with workload and supervision, and how best to ensure education, training and retraining that is needed to maintain skilled and highly motivated professionals, all essential. Health visitors do a fantastic job in supporting families, and the review will work with the profession to ensure that health visiting is viewed as an attractive career with the right level of development and support. I believe that a strong focus on supporting the workforce itself is vital to ensure that every baby gets the best start of life. Thank you for inviting me to be at the launch of this seminal report today, Andrea. It's wonderful to be here.
Thanks so much, Cheryl, and sorry to retire you 3 days early. I was not quite sure whether you were still here, but I'm delighted that you are, and thank you so much for being with us today and for all you've done in particular to help new families. So moving swiftly on to action area number 5, and that's going to be presented by Professor Peter Fonagy, Head of the Division of Psychology and Language Science at UCL, and also Chief Executive of the Anna Freud Centre. And he also is so much expertise in the importance of early attachment. Over to you. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you very much, Andrea. It's a privilege to be here, and it has been a privilege over the years to observe what you have achieved and what enormous dividends persistence pays. You have done a magical job, and those of us in the early years research and clinical workforce enormously appreciative of what you have done. It is really extremely important that every parent and every carer has the confidence that the services and support in their area will help them give their baby the best start for life. So in action area 5, outcome and evaluation, we'll work to improve data, evaluation, measured outcomes, and proportionate inspection, and ensure that the system is working together to give families the support that they need. There are 3 areas for evaluation: establishing what works, ensuring that local authorities can measure their own effectiveness to improve the services on offer, and providing assurance on progress at a national level. This will involve finding the quickest way to achieve long-lasting compliance for the collection of relevant data within existing resourcing and promoting data sharing. Importantly, the review will work with others to identify what works. This is where parent and carer panels will be so influential, sharing their views and experiences to improve services and support. And I think what is also important is a common set of goals that will ensure every baby gets the best start for life. This will involve the development of an outcomes framework, which will give parents and carers the vital assurance about the quality of service in their local area, and also nationally give government a clear overview of performance. By having proper measurements in place, we can ensure that every baby gets the best start for life. Andrea, thank you very much, and thank you for you and your colleagues for this wonderful review.
Thanks so much, Peter. So yes, outcomes and evaluation, making the Start for Life system work much better for families. And then moving straight on to action area 6, the final action area, I'm delighted to introduce Simon Russell, Lord Russell, who is one of the cross-parliament, cross-house advisory group members who've done so much work on this early years review. Simon Russell has a huge interest in this area over a very long time, and he's going to present action area 6. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you very much indeed. It's a huge pleasure for me to do this, not least because I have the privilege of being a governor of Coram, the oldest children's charity in the United Kingdom, set up by Captain Thomas Coram in 1739. I know he would be completely delighted at what we're doing today, albeit he might be a touch disappointed that it's taken 282 years to get to this point. It's clear that giving every baby the best start for life needs committed leadership at a national and a local level to provide families with a feeling of confidence that their voices are being heard and that continuous improvement is a genuine commitment. So Action Area 6, Leadership for Change, will help us to learn from the experiences of parents and carers, provide clear leadership and accountability at a national and local level, and build the economic case for investment in the Start for Life, ensuring that the system is working together to give families the support they need. Parent and carer panels will be an integral part of this. They will help local leaders to shape the Start for Life offer, ensuring continuous improvement and using the voice of the family to inform national policy and decision-making. A single, identifiable leader, accountable for the Start for Life offer in their local area, will ensure that the 1001 critical days will be prioritized and that services provide the help that families need. And what will be really transformative, in my view, is that in future, there will be a cabinet minister who will be responsible for overseeing the implementation of the agreed actions from this review, ensuring that Start for Life is kept at the heart of policy-making decisions across government. I think it's also extremely helpful that you, Andrea, will continue in your work advising the government in this area and continue to transform the support for families during those 1001 critical days. It is so important that the needs of babies and carers are at the heart of policy development and implementation. So working with other stakeholders to build the economic case for further investment in the Start for Life will be vital for the future. Thank you very much.
Brilliant, thank you. The rabbit out of the hat, the thing so many people have longed for so long, is real leadership in this issue, both locally and really importantly at a national level. And I'm so pleased that the Prime Minister has agreed that there should be cabinet level oversight for the Start for Life. I think that is really going to make a difference. So you've now heard the 6 action areas in a bit of detail, and I know you will want to know, so what's the next steps? What's going to happen next? Well, I can tell you, first of all, that the early years team, 6 civil servants led by the wonderful Liz Ketch, and my parliamentary team, Luke Greystone and Laura Dunn, have been flat out. So the first thing on our agenda is a large, stiff gin and tonic. But tomorrow, we will start the implementation phase. And what that means is we will be creating a new Start for Life delivery unit, which will involve a larger team of civil servants across Whitehall with a decent amount of expertise, who will have 3 goals. The first one is to implement all the actions in this report. So when you look at the action areas, think about a year from now, these action areas are going to be well on the way, if not already implemented. That's to give you an idea of the time frame. The second priority is going to look at the needs and the priorities of the workforce. And I know for many of you who work in the early years sector, you have just been flat out. And thank you so much that you have. So many families have said that even though they couldn't see their health visitor, they knew they were there, they could text them, they could Zoom them. You've been a lifeline for so many families. Thank you so much for all you do. And this work in the implementation phase will look properly at how we can better support you, make sure you've got the resources you need. And then the third task for the implementation phase will be to work with Treasury officials to make the economic case for more investment in the early years. And you can absolutely rest assured that we will be doing that. So I hope that that's given you a bit of a flavour for the next step. The implementation phase will take about a year, and I will continue to chair it. And during that time, all of those on the panel today and in the advisory groups, the broader professionals, academics and parliamentarian advisory groups, and so many in the early years sector who've already engaged with us, will be helping us to implement this review. So thank you again. And I'm now going to get back to the questions from so many people. So here we go with the first one. I'm going to give this to Tim Lawton to answer. Tim from Helen Rampton Policy Office, Action to Children. How will you measure success in 2 years' time?
Crikey. Well, the success is going to be measured on outcomes for children. And I think in the past, where many well-intentioned policies have been measured on how much bricks and mortar, how many buildings or how many boxes have been ticked, this has absolutely got to be measured by the progress that babies and children are making themselves, and how well attached they are to their parents, and they're turning up at school absolutely set fair for getting on at school, going on in their teenage years and their careers. So I want to see progress by those outcomes, and rather than just all those boxes that we've ticked in the past. And we've got to make sure that all the professionals are working together so that we've got meaningful measures of those of outcomes that are really going to make that big difference that we need in those early years.
Thanks, Tim. We say in government that we value what we measure, and I think you're exactly right. If we can look at the outcomes, that will be really key. So coming to the next question from Alison Morton, for Eunice, the evidence is really strong that relationships are at the heart of successful prevention and early intervention. What steps will be taken to make sure families can build a relationship with their key worker through the concept of continuity? And can you talk a bit more about what we will seek to do to make sure that every family has a sort of key point of contact in their family hub? Thanks, Eunice.
Okay, thank you. Complex question. I think one of the really important things in answering this is something that I learned when I was a social worker with the families that I was preparing for adoption, who would say, if the parents of the children that we are adopting had this level of support and training to be parents, then we wouldn't be needed. And I think that what we have to do is how we shape this in the implementation phase is put the needs of parents and carers very centre stage. We spend a lot of time, I spend a lot of time training early years professionals to work with parents, but actually we don't do that with parents. So ensuring that there is a link person, ensuring that that's seamless transition, understanding of attachment that we know as professionals is important, has got to be given to parents.
Completely agree. Thanks very much, Eunice. It's so vital that families know where to go. Absolutely. So next question from Katie Luff for Cheryl Adams. With the new early years development programme, can you guarantee mothers and babies will be given monthly substantial support as well as monthly weigh-ins? I mean, I read that to mean, you know, how will health visitors, you know, be able to provide the wraparound support that families need? Thanks, Cheryl.
Okay, I'm going to answer this on behalf of myself, certainly not on behalf of government. As you all know, I think health visiting numbers are much lower than they need to be to provide families with what they need. So it's going to be really, really important that the recommendations of the review are listened to, that new investment comes into health visiting, and that investment needs to go through local authorities who did have their public health grants cut, and as soon as that money goes back in, it'll be possible to rebuild the profession and provide families with the service that they would like. But it's I'm afraid, let's be honest about it, it basically comes down to hours in the day, and the health visiting caseloads are running at the moment at an average of around 500. So that's how it is, but that's not how it's going to stay, is it, Andrew? It's going to get a lot better. There's a commitment behind this, and the great joy of this review is that it's holistic. It's really looking at it, everything in the round. I think that's for those who've been involved, it's a real strength, and it also looks at different groups of families and their needs. So, you know, I'm convinced that things will get better, but we haven't got all the answers today, but we know what needs to be done.
Thanks, Cheryl. And it's absolutely right. In the implementation phase, we will be looking carefully at workforce with Cheryl, the Institute of Health Visiting, and many others to make sure that support is provided. So now a question for Alan Gregoire from Ayala Ockert. How will stakeholder organisations in the third sector be able to input into the implementation phase?
Okay, well, I think this is a question for everybody, really, because lots of discussion has been had about the critical importance of the third sector, who do tasks that nobody in the statutory sector can do, so that, you know, they are absolutely fundamental, and their integration into the whole approach is absolutely central to the thinking here, and the family hubs will offer both the space, but most importantly of all, the access between families and every sector, working together, collaboratively, communicating efficiently in a way, without overlap but without gaps. That's of course a dream, but a dream that potentially can be fulfilled. But we're going to have to work very hard at it, and we're all going to have to value each other and respect each other and understand each other and talk to each other, and of course love and nurture each other, which is what babies need. And if we can do that for each other, my goodness, we can do it for the next generation.
Thanks, Alan. Great answer. And certainly for me, having come from the third sector originally, from the Parent-Infant Partnerships and the Parent-Infant Foundation, I think the third sector does a superb job to support the whole new offer for families. And I think it's going to be vital that their role is expanded and very much included in this implementation phase. Now we have a question for Viv, which is that breastfeeding support organisations have had little input into the modernisation of the Healthy Child programme. And the question is, how will the new Start for Life programme make sure that the expertise of these third sector groups is harnessed and that stakeholders are fully engaged in developing the detail of more support for breastfeeding? Thanks, Viv.
Thank you very much. Our breastfeeding rates have been stubbornly low for a very long time, and absolute commitment for everybody here to promote breastfeeding, to understand the barriers to breastfeeding, to do everything that we can to remove the structural barriers nationally, at community level, societally, and to support individual women. We worked very closely with the breastfeeding charities on undertaking being part of the Yale study, an international study on breastfeeding. And we used the outcome of that to inform the initial thinking on the Healthy Child programme and breastfeeding, but it isn't done. So all the things I presented today are things in progress. So as part of the Healthy Child programme development, and I'm sure in part of the Best Start for Life programme development, continuing to work with experts and stakeholders, both on the totality of the programme and on specific important health challenges, will be really, really important. And we absolutely know the benefits of breastfeeding for physical health, for the mother and the baby. We know that it's supports attuned parenting. We know that it would actually save the NHS a lot of money if we really invested well in supporting breastfeeding at all of those levels. So I thank you for the work you did through the Yale study, and look forward to working with you all as we move forward on the Healthy Child programme as part of the Best Start for Life programme. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Viv. A question for Peter Fonagy from Diana Robertson. In the context of parental mental health, what more can we do across services to support the parental relationship where there is conflict as early as possible? Could relationship support be provided as part of the Family Hub offer? Thanks, Peter.
I'm speaking now on my flying solo, as it were. I cannot speak for the entire Family Hub offer, but is there a single thing that would change the course of child development, as Alain Gregoire has said, as Jane Barlow has said? Yes, and it is really the emphasis on relationship. We now know that it is the contingency, the association in time between the child's expression and the parent's response that actually helps establish in the child's mind their own identity, themselves as agents, as individuals, experience of their body. There is now wonderful neuroscience work from Carl Friston modeling with the same technologies that they model the pandemics, and I hope even better, with kind of Bayesian mathematics, just how important for brain development it is for there to be somebody who can respond contingently to the child. So if this is not an essential part of the family hub work, I shall be very, very sad and disappointed.
That's heard loud and clear. Thanks, Peter. A question from Larissa Joy. As Simon Russell, and this is for Simon, as Simon Russell so clearly pointed out, building the economic case for investment is critically important. Can any of the panelists expand a little on this area and talk about the specific dimensions of the economic case you think are likely to be most compelling to the Treasury to unlock more investment? I might also have a go at this after you, Simon. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Larissa, for that curveball. I have been trying to work with or in spite of government on behalf of children for about 35 years. And my experience is that hell hath no fury, like different government departments trying to avoid one another studiously in pursuit of the same objective. And that has been a besetting problem. And if you look at page 115 of the report, you will see that there are no less than 11 ministerial portfolios across 5 different government departments, which are involved in, what that are included in this review. All of them have different bits. And trying to get them to work together is essential, because unless everybody's working together, you don't actually have a picture of the whole situation, and you can't actually start really looking at the numbers in any sensible way. So the fact that there is now going to be a cabinet minister sitting around the cabinet table with the person who has asked him or her to take this on, i.e. the Prime Minister, sitting in the same room, and that the Secretaries of State for the 5 departments are peers, will be a very different dynamic to the way in which governments have previously tried to conduct these cross-departmental initiatives. And having it all joined up and having a cabinet minister who will be a peer of the Chancellor of the Exchequer, being able to articulate it, backed up by the Secretaries of State for the other departments that are involved, will, I think, be a first. And I would hope and expect that that will produce some results. But Andrea has rather more personal experience of sitting around a cabinet table than I do.
Thanks, Simon. Well, I completely agree with what you said. I mean, the whole point of arguing for a cabinet member with responsibility for Start for Life is exactly as you say, that person is then with their colleagues in cabinet able to use leverage to make sure that everything is focused on continuous improvement for the Start for Life. But I'd just like to tackle the specific point about the Green Book, which is in my view, absolutely key to this. So the Treasury looks at investment around its Green Book rules. And as everyone will know, the Treasury will invest in a bridge, for example, and put the money up front and then wait 10 years down the line after the bridge is built for the economic return. And actually, it seems to me that we don't do that with social policy. We do it with infrastructure, but we don't do it with humans. Whereas if we were to say, look, if you invest in the early years, you have so many more school-ready children who could go on to do brilliant things, but also not only is the potential of that generation of children so much stronger, but also the likelihood of them going on to have unhappy lives that become very costly to the state is also reduced. So actually there is an economic return case there. And that really is what I intend to focus on. I mean, I was 25 years in finance before coming into politics, and I do feel that making and winning that case is the next mission for me over the implementation period. So yes, in this report today, we're announcing the join up of services, putting the baby at the heart, making everything work better for families. But I'm very alert to the fact that to do this really well, we are going to need to also make the case for further investment. So great question. Thank you very much. Thanks for your answer, Simon. There is another one that is quite linked to that, which is from Lydia Kite, the chair of What About the Children? And she asks, again, a quite lengthy question, but her question is to make sure all babies get the best start in life. Isn't it time that central government, the Treasury in particular, did more than simply encourage local authorities to support the emotional well-being and health of babies from conception with a long-term integrated strategy backed up by ring-fenced funding and clear investment? Now, Simon, I'll have a go at that first, if I may, and then hand back to you. But my view of this is that, as colleagues on the call will know, in 2010, the Sure Start budgets were unring-fenced. So there are still a huge number of Sure Starts, but of course, the focus on the buildings was very, very apparent in 2010. And what this report seeks to do is to build on the Sure Starts with our family hub policy that really focuses on the services that families need and the continuous support that families need. So yes, I would agree, as I said before, that there will be the need for more investment in this, and we will be making the case for that. But at the same time, it's really important that with this new policy, we look to the surround support for families, and not just for the number of hard buildings, because what families told us is they need those services, they need a welcoming hub, but they also want to be able to use digital and virtual support and so on. So it's not just about buildings. But Simon, do you want to have another go at answering that question? Thank you.
Well, I think I think there should be a sort of Royal Society for the preservation of local authorities, because they are, they must feel that they're between a rock and a hard place. And I think a lot of us were very conscious, as the domestic abuse bill has gone through the House of Lords, that we have put in, and the government has agreed to, a whole lot of extra, what would in effect be statutory duties, in addition to the statutory duties local authorities already have to look after children and babies. And to be a local authority in that situation, even if you can understand the reason for that, you must be thinking, how on earth are we actually going to be able to do and deliver this? And I think I come back to my previous answer, which is the responsibility for sorting this out and working with local authorities to find ways through this is going to come from leadership at the top and leadership at the local level, talking to one another. It means being much more open, perhaps, than we have in the past about the economic trade-offs and about what is actually going to be required. It will mean really going and identifying best practice, and as early as possible, flagging it up very, very proactively to make it clear as a local authority, if you're not actually listening to what clearly works and you're choosing not to try it, that is probably not going to be acceptable. So I do think it requires local authorities to be much fleeter of foot, but it also requires central government to perhaps to listen with slightly better and more sympathetic hearing than it has done recently to the hard place that many local authorities feel they're in.
I do agree, and in particular in the review, we did a lot of virtual visits to local authorities that were providing superb support for families. And so sharing best practice is absolutely at the heart of what we'll be also doing in the implementation phase, as well as recognising that they are hard pressed in many cases. Now I have a question for Cheryl from Sarah Cowley, who is pleased to see that there's emphasis on health visiting services, offering a minimum of 5 reviews to every parent, as they have become more like a maximum in many places. She also welcomes the flexibility implied in allowing health visitors to visit a family in a range of places. But she says she hasn't seen any evidence about the efficacy or effectiveness of assessments carried out over the telephone. She says, is a virtual contact really suitable for health reviews? Question for Cheryl, thank you.
And I think, again, answering personally, I would say it's absolutely not. You can't do a health review unless you can see the whole child and the family. And doing a health review in the home is obviously particularly valuable because you see who else is in the home and what else might be going on there. So this is something that endlessly taxes the Institute of Health Visiting, because obviously with COVID, reviews have had to go online. There's been no other way. Better to do a review by Zoom than not to do it at all. However, as everything starts to open up, I think the core health reviews must always be done face to face. However, clearly there's a place, and actually, even some really imaginative breastfeeding support. There's been some fantastic breastfeeding peer supporters who provided excellent services online to parents, services that they wouldn't have otherwise had. So there's a place for virtual, but certainly from the Institute's point of view, we would be pushing very, very hard, and actually not for the 5 minimum. We're absolutely delighted that Public Health England are now recommending an extra 2 contacts, the universal contacts, and in Scotland they have 11. So we'll be continuing to nudge towards some even greater things. So thank you for your question.
Thanks, Cheryl. And actually, during the implementation phase, we will be talking to our colleagues in Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales to share best practice. And as you highlight, Scotland has a recommendation for a higher number of health visits, but there's a lot of learning to be done. And I would just like to have a momentary commercial break for everybody who is still with us to say, please do look at the report today. There are some fantastic case studies in there, experiences of different types of families and carers, all different experiences, and a real wealth of knowledge in there, as well as some really good learning from overseas experiences of how they do things in other countries. So please do take a look at it. I do encourage you to. Now a question for Tim from Sabila Ebu Alwani. A question about the digitalization of services, which they say is a brilliant idea, but how will this affect or apply to families who don't have regular access to connected devices? Thanks, Tim.
And it's a very good question. And although I think it's calculated something like 95% of people have access to digital capability, digital exclusion is still a big issue. And it's become an issue, obviously, during the pandemic and the government having to roll out not just computers, but access to broadband for school children not able to go into school, I think has meant that this is something that is absolutely here to stay, that our lives in the digital world have probably been accelerated. What was going to take several years perhaps to transform has been brought about in the space of a number of months. So clearly we must make sure that where people have already got that digital access, we make the most of it, but people mustn't be excluded because they haven't got that. So we've got to make provision. And I think local authorities and schools are going to want to have all their families much more networked and joined up in the future anyway. So digital exclusion is an absolutely crucial issue that we must make sure that nobody is missed out from getting their start in life for their children simply because they're not wired up at the moment. And that's all part of the grand plan.
Thanks very much. Yes, and I must say NHSX have been really keen and enthusiastic and supportive about this whole idea. So certainly digital exclusion will be one of the issues we'll be looking at. Now we've got a question for Peter Fonagy from Grant Gordon. He says, in terms of outcomes, it was reassuring to hear Tim Lawton highlight school readiness as a vital ultimate outcome for children in the early years. In building the outcomes and evaluation framework, will this issue be looked at, Peter?
Absolutely. And I think part of the task here is to establish an outcomes framework that is widely consulted on, examined and explored, the tires are kicked, we see that it is robust, and then adopted globally. Because for an outcomes framework to actually do the business that it needs to do, it has to have everyone signing up to it, because it's only then that we know that what is supposed to work is actually working when it's in the ground. It's only then that we can properly identify areas where it's not working as well as it should and go in there and try and improve the functioning or the implementation in those areas. And it's only then that actually nationally we can look at how much we are improving. And to me, demonstrating success is what will sustain this mission. Unless we can show that what we are doing is actually making a difference. Another government can come along and change the priorities. This is not a priority that should be messed around with. And in order to make sure that that doesn't happen, I think we really need to make a concerted, united, joint effort to ensure that an outcomes framework is adopted, improved, but used to improve further.
Thanks, Peter. We now actually have a question for Christina. I hope you're on standby for that, Christina. From Matt Buttery from Triple P, who says you talked about the concept of parenting as a public health issue, and he asks if you could articulate this further. How do we move to this from a system where parenting support is still very stigmatized and parents feel judged, as the Royal Foundation powerfully illustrated last year? Is this the moment for us as a country to gain confidence to talk more about family and parenting, and for government to find its voice in this area? So Christina, perhaps you would answer, and then I'm going to ask Tim Lawton to give us his thoughts, because he's been so closely involved with this also for so long.
Absolutely. I'm standing on the shoulder of a giant called Tim Lawton when I answer that. I think we definitely want for this government to understand that at the end of a year such as the one we've just witnessed and experienced, parents have withstood all kinds of difficulties that were unforeseen, including having to become teachers. We know about in loco parentis, but this was, in locus magister. We've seen how parents have had to go on to digital support rather than physical support. And we've seen how horrific, serious phenomena like domestic abuse and substance abuse and even gambling have increased during lockdown. So what we need is a huge, what I think one of your panelists called progressive universalist pushes, where everyone can have access to support, which reduces that fear of being stigmatized as a poor parent, but also where we have a boost in parenting confidence. Whether it is in private schools where there is an ethos of sexual violence or allegations of sexual violence, or in families that are part of the Troubled Families programs, parents need support and skills to feel confident in this most difficult and lengthiest of job titles. So I think the time has come for this government to heed your words, Andrea, and your words, Tim, and move into a public health mode.
Thanks, Christina. Over to the giant.
Giant and recently departed and old. But look, parenting is a huge challenge. Those of us who've been through it, it is the biggest job probably we'll ever do in our lives, but it's the most important job we ever do in our lives. And all of us, whatever background we come from, whatever advantages or disadvantages we have, we could all do with some parenting support and advice. It may be you're lucky enough to have a very wise mum, dad, granny, grandfather who's on hand. You may not have that. So it may be a friend or it may be a professional you need to access. There's no shame in wanting to be a better parent. And certainly I think mental health, mental illness was a big stigmatizing issue. And I think that has changed drastically over the last 20 years. People now openly talk about mental illness problems, and goodness knows the mental health problems we've had coming through the pandemic. And people are coming forward, thank goodness, to say, look, I'm really struggling a bit here. I need help. Now, many of us, well, many people, not necessarily all of us, go to the gym because we want to be fitter physically for good reasons. There's no stigma in going to the gym because you want to be physically fitter. Why should there be any stigma going to seek help to make sure you're a better parent, to make sure that your attachment to your child is strong, that your own mental health is in a good place, so you can pass on that strong mental health to your child and get a strong attachment and give that child the love and nurture and support that that child needs as well. So absolutely, we've got to encourage people to get out there. If you need support, get out there and get it. And we've got to make sure as the government that those support services are there, whether they're face-to-face, whether they're digitally, whether they're Zooming or whatever, that if you think you need some help, you're a bit worried about something, you've got questions to ask, then there are people there who can give you that support and it will make you a better parent.
Thank you, Tim. I think that is a fantastic point to end today, the importance of making support available to every family so that they can give their baby the best start for life. And whether it is through a wonderful family hub that's welcoming to every family, whether it's through the right set of early years support workforce, whether they're public sector professionals or indeed volunteers, we all need a bit of help at some time in the parenting experience, some much more help than others. And I think what this report is going to do is to really focus minds and agendas on putting the baby at the centre of everything. So I'm really excited about it. And again, thank you so much to my team, to all of today's panelists and to the advisory groups. And I think the old African proverb that it takes a village to raise a child, we are that village. You know, we on this call, the people who take such an interest and who've spent so much of their careers and their lives championing better support for new families, are all part of that village. And so I really do look forward to working with all of you.